Sorry about that. What's going on, guys? You can hear me now? What's up, Gary? What's up, Devin? How you doing there, Nick? What's going on, Christopher Williams? Jonathan Gates, what's up? Sir Dave, what's going on, Sir Dave? Sir Dave, man, congrats on that Cleveland game last week, man. They almost pulled that one out. I told you guys they were a little improved, man. They might be a tough go. I almost got the upset like I had almost predicted. What's up, Marky Mark? How's everybody doing this week? Don't remind me. And your Jets. Yeah, let's go. Jets, Jets. The Jets got busy on Monday night, man. Holy smoke. They even surprised me. But Donald and company was pretty good, man. Quincy and Nunwood was absolutely wonderful. We'll see what happens tomorrow for my New York Jets and for Mr. Dave's Cleveland Browns. They got to go out there and deal with New Orleans tomorrow. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes. Then I'm going to basically go over, obviously, some injury news. I want to be able to report that. Checked that in about an hour and a half ago. There's obviously some news. And, of course, I want to go over the game lines a little bit. Basically give you guys a little bit more of an idea of where I am more targeting going into tomorrow and making my final decisions. And just give you guys a couple of pointers, on some of the games that I think you guys should target, as well as possibly some surprise games you can target. Steelers. Gary stuttered. You're a Steeler fan, Gary? I have a friend of mine who's a Steeler fan, too. Steelers, man, tomorrow, I don't know. Tomorrow's going to be a shootout tomorrow with Pittsburgh. That Pittsburgh game with Kansas City is going to be electrifying, man. We got 3-4 stud. I mean, Kansas City is just loaded with guys that are so dangerous, man. Their team is explosive offensively, as far as them having at least a star stud player pretty much in every position. And that makes it always dangerous offensively for any team. And on top of that, they got to go up against Pittsburgh, who has a pretty decent offense as well, with Mr. James Conner coming through big last week. I expect him to do the same tomorrow. He's probably going to be more highly owned tomorrow. And at the same time, Big Ben is a little banged up, but, I'm not too fond of Roethlisberger, so he has a bum knee. It's a little sore still. But we'll see how it pans out for him, man. It should be an interesting game. High-scoring game indeed. The Kansas City. It's actually the highest implied total over-under in tomorrow's slate at 53.5 points. They got Pittsburgh pretty much have a 29.5 implied score, while Kansas City's at 24. I think this game is capable of going to 30. And it's the first game I'm going to definitely talk about out of the games. All right, let's get started. Let me give you guys a couple of what I believe are possibly the best plays as far as teams are concerned. I'm going to have exposure. I don't know about you guys, but obviously this is why I do the live show, so I can share with you guys more or less what am I thinking going into tomorrow. And, and normally go with, with most people, obviously the right thing to do is to try to get as much offensive weapons as you can. So you definitely want to target the games that are more than likely most highly contested as far as offensively. So I'm going to have some exposure. I believe everybody should have some exposure to the New Orleans game. If not, that definitely should be targeting the Rams tomorrow as well. They have their implied totals for 29.3 points. Then you got also Pittsburgh at 29.5. You got Washington. I'm going to have some exposure to the Washington game, 26.8. Then you got Denver at 26.3. I think that's an area that you should target as well. Then you got the Chargers. And I also looking at Atlanta as well as Kansas City. Those are the teams I'm looking at. They're in some pretty good matchups. And if you're playing the 4 o'clock slate, Anybody playing the 4 o'clock slate. If you're playing the 4 o'clock slate, I think you definitely should target Ram players, San Francisco, and even Detroit. I think the San Francisco-Detroit game is going to be pretty interesting because we want to see how well Matthew Stafford bounces back after my Jets, destroyed him on Monday. So we'll see what's going on with that with Matthew Stafford. But he has some good weapons. Granted, Detroit doesn't have a good backfield. I mean, LeGarrette Blount played a little bit, and he got banged up against the Jets. We had to, bust his butt a little bit, and the guy was out. I think it was a bum shoulder or something like that in the third quarter. So we'll see how it pans out for Detroit. But I think Detroit will bounce back a little bit this week. I don't think they're going to give up 45 points to San Francisco. But I do like Jimmy G and the 49ers as far as offensively. I think both teams are going to try to establish the run, but they really don't have run games at the moment. So I'm thinking these games are going to be more of a shootout as far as who's going to be able to establish the offensive passing game going. If it's going to be Jimmy G with his I could see him with Dante Pettis and Garcon, as well as Mr. Kittle, who he has built a nice little rapport with already after hitting him for like 5 or 6 times last week. He actually missed a touchdown too. The guy dropped one, but nonetheless, I think that's going to be an interesting game for the 4 o'clock, and I think you should definitely target at the 4 o'clock game tomorrow. A little bit of Denver's, some exposure to Denver as well. I definitely like Sanders and Thomas in that game. I don't like the backfield for either one of the teams, for Oakland or Denver, and I definitely don't like nobody on Oakland other than maybe Jared Cook, and he's a very good price still on DK for Mr. Cook, even after last week's game. So he will be the only one I'll have some exposure to tomorrow, as far as that 4 o'clock game. So keep in mind, if you're going to play the 4 o'clock games, I think a good game in a 4 o'clock game to target as a game stack is definitely the San Francisco-Detroit game. I could see getting 3 receivers out of that game and then choosing one of the quarterbacks. And if you're doing multiple lineups, definitely, make sure you have Jimmy G in 1 or 2 lineups, and then have turn it around and set up Matthew Stafford on 1 or 2 of those as well. That's where I think. So getting back to the early games, the main slate, man, and that's where everybody wants to definitely do well. Like I said before, the teams that I am targeting for tomorrow on implied totals, obviously New Orleans, the Rams, Pittsburgh, Kansas City game, the Washington, Denver, the Chargers, as well as the Atlanta team, and Kansas City I already mentioned, and Atlanta. I think those are the ones that I'm going to definitely focus on. As far as injury news, I did hear that Josh Gordon is out tomorrow. So if anybody has not heard about that, Josh Gordon is out for Cleveland. What that does, it opens the doors, obviously, for more targets for Landry, as well as maybe Mr. Rashard Higgins and David Njoku, the tight end, may get some more targets as well, and including the rookie, the Antonio Callaway. So look for one of those guys. I think that is a good game for Cleveland. I mean, as far as New Orleans looked so bad last week defensively. I do believe New Orleans is going to be a better defensive team this week. And if they are horrible this week, then boy, they're going to have some problems this year, because they definitely have the offensive weapons to score points. They cannot afford to get into shootouts every week with everybody. But this is a good game. The New Orleans-Cleveland game, simply because if Cleveland, I think it's the best of both worlds for New Orleans, because if they happen to get ahead, then they'll turn around and try to run the ball a little bit more, and it's still going to be some more touches for Kamara. But at the same time, if the game is fairly close, then you got Kamara, not only getting his rushes, he's also going to get his catches as well. So it opens the doors to be very, very dangerous. But it also opens the doors for Cleveland. You have to look at it the other way around, too. If Cleveland has to play from behind, definitely like Tyrod Taylor. It's a sneaky play there, going up and having to, throw the ball a little bit more. And then that opens the doors to Mr. Callaway, to Landry getting more targets, as well as Mr. Higgins. So definitely a game to watch out for. I think when it comes to the players, as far as New Orleans, let me start with New Orleans as far as the exposure. I really like in New Orleans. Obviously, everybody knows that the top 3 guys on New Orleans is Breeze for tomorrow, which I had on my quarterback list this week, among a lot of other people as well. It's obviously he's in a very, very favorable matchup. So you got Breeze in the backfield. Obviously, you got Kamara. I mean, Kamara is in an outstanding position here, obviously, with Cleveland. And then, of course, you have to consider Michael Thomas, as well as that triple threat right there. So New Orleans is in a good spot. I mean, definitely a good team stack if you can get them in there. I don't see no reason why not. You can definitely do it on DraftKings for sure. On DraftKings for sure. Let me open up this window here, guys. Sorry about that. Let me open up this pop chat. I get myself going and then I forget to do certain things here. Where's the pop chat? Give me a moment, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's any ladies here, I apologize. Okay. All right, so let me come back over here. So with New Orleans, like I said, the game as far as team, I just want to be able to go over with you guys right away what are the games what are the teams I'm targeting, and as well as what players. And as far as those same players and those same teams, there's going to be obviously some team stacks. So with New Orleans, those are the three. When you think about the Rams, obviously you're thinking Gurley, you're thinking Goff, and you're also thinking I like Cooper Kupp for tomorrow, as opposed to any of the other guys the Rams have. And then with Pittsburgh, obviously you got to think of Big Ben. I'm not fond of Big Ben. I don't believe I'm going to have any exposure to Big Ben, but I think I think Antonio Brown is definitely in a good spot here tomorrow against Kansas City, and of course Juju Schuster should be in a good position as well. And in the backfield, obviously having the dual threat back in James Conner, I could expect Conner. So they got about 4 weapons there with Big Ben. It's a good match. And then of course on the other side of the field, I definitely like Kansas City's quadruple threat when you consider Mahomes, dual threat quarterback, Hunt, dual threat running back, which I love those types of players. And then you also have the tight end Kelsey. He definitely is going to bounce back at some point. He is just too good. He's one of the top 5, probably the top 3. I think he's probably the second best tight end in the league, other than Gronkowski, and maybe Ertz is right there, right next to him. So Kelsey's going to have a bounce back game. He has 6 targets, only 1 catch last week. I expect him to get a few more targets. He hasn't built, I guess, that rapport just yet with Mahomes, but it's gonna happen. The same thing with Hunt. I expect him to have a better game this week. And then you also have the speedster in Tyreek Hill. So those 4 guys, they are very dangerous. I can't see either one of the teams stopping one another. We know Kansas City's definitely not as good a defensive team all around defensively in both phases, pass defense as well as rushing defense, as opposed to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's more in the top, maybe top 12, top 14 in both categories. So they're a little bit more competitive, a little bit better in those areas. But we'll see what happens, Then when I go down, I think of the next guys that I like. Washington. Obviously, Washington, you got to think of Jordan Reed. You got Alex Smith. Alex Smith loves tight ends. Yes, you can see over the years he's always had a very good tight end. He was in Kansas City. He had the dual threat back. He had the nice tight end, and he had also the very dangerous receiver. That's the one thing he's lacking in Washington, is that really speedster on the outside as far as the receiver is concerned. But he does have, 2 fairly good running backs which complement each other, with Chris Thompson, who's capable of being a dual threat, can run the ball, but is an excellent receiver. And then at the same time, you have Adrian Peterson, who showed that he was unbelievable last week. We'll see how he plays this week. I'm more in favor of Chris Thompson this week than Adrian Peterson, but I like the combination of them sharing the time and doing 2 different things for the team and helping out Alex Smith in other areas. And then, of course, you got to look at Jordan Reed. I mean, Alex Smith loves tight ends, and Jordan Reed is one of the best, probably one of the top 6, 7 in the league. So I expect him to get some exposure and have a big game as well. Then when it comes to Denver, I definitely like Denver as far as Casey Keenum with not the backfield. I don't like the backs right now. I'm not on any of the running backs as of yet. But I definitely love the receivers. Thomas and Sanders definitely fine plays. I think that they're going to have a fairly simple game, easy game tomorrow. I think they're going to definitely do well against Oakland. Then we got the Chargers. I definitely like them as a team stack with, of course, Mr. Rivers, Gordon, the dual threat back, as well as Mr. Keenan Allen. So between those 3 guys, I think they'll be all right as well. Atlanta needs a bounce back game. as far as offensively. Julio Jones, he's one of the top receivers in the league. Matt Ryan is, he needs to pick it up. Matt Ryan could have a good game here. He loves playing indoors. This is a good spot for him. So Matt Ryan could possibly have a nice breakout game here in the second week of the season. So I like him pairing up. And then we know, obviously, that there is no Freeman is not, Devontae's not playing. So we know it's going to be T. Coleman. And, we'll see how that goes. I think he's going to get some touches. We know he's very good from the backfield, especially inside the 20 in the red zone. So we'll see how that pans out. Atlanta definitely moves the ball, so they are capable of getting to the red zone 4 or 5 times, 6 times a game. So I can see them getting a couple of scores tomorrow. And then we got, and those are the ones that I'm really concentrating on as far as team stacks. As far as a game stack, I do like 2 games tomorrow for game stacks. I think the Kansas City-Pittsburgh game is an excellent game for a game stack. I already put a couple of lineups together, and I can see where I can get Mahomes in one lineup in multiple lineups. Have Mahomes. You have to make multiple lineups for you to be able to be effective with that. But if you could get Mahomes and you can get in there maybe a Kelsey and then throw in there a Hill as well, you should be okay. And then be able to squeeze in there from Pittsburgh maybe a Juju Schuster, possibly James Conner. I mean, now you got 2 guys that are going to definitely get a lot of touches. So or vice versa, you can go Brown with Juju and maybe even Connor, or if you love Big Ben. I'm not in favor of Big Ben, but I could see myself using 2 Pittsburgh players, or maybe even 3, and getting 2 or maybe 3 out of Kansas City. It's very much doable, both on Fanduel and I believe also on DK. So it's a game that you could definitely target as a game stack if you wish to. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I actually think this game has a possibility of being in the 30s for both teams. That's how I believe it. And the weather's not that bad at all tomorrow in Pittsburgh. It should be a good game, good weather for the teams to be able to get up and down the field. So that's what I'm expecting in that game. I think that's a good game stack. Another game that I think is a good game stack, and it's probably going to be a surprise, but I really like the Washington-Indianapolis game. I think in Indianapolis and Washington, Luck, you could put in Luck there. Mac looks like he's more than likely going to play, but I will probably target Luck with maybe Hilton, definitely with Jack Doyle. That's his boy. So you can go that route with those 3, and you can also stack them with 2 players from Washington. You can go to strictly the Washington backfield if you wanted to, with Peterson and Thompson, with a stack with Luck, Hilton, and Doyle. I can see that happening. I can see that work. Considering that both this game is going to be in the 20s, we have Washington projected at about 26.8, almost 27 points, and then Indianapolis at 21, 22. And then, of course, if you're looking at Washington, you want to stack it with Alex Smith, and then maybe use 2 guys from Indianapolis. I would definitely go with Doyle and Hilton in that lineup, in that game stack, and have Alex Smith with Thompson and Peterson, and maybe get one more receiver from Washington or from Indianapolis. I think that will work. But I think that game is going to be a fairly good game too. Luck. Luck has some weapons. And then the other thing I think about Indianapolis more than likely is going to fall a little bit behind in this game, just a little bit. But they have the offensive weapons as far as passing the ball with Luck. Him having the connection already with Hilton over the years, as well as Doyle, I think they're going to be fine. If they can get the running game going, they'll be all right. I think the running game is in favor, obviously, to Washington. They have the combination back there, like I mentioned before, a guy who's able to run between the tackles fairly well, and then you got a back that not only can run between the tackles fairly well, but also can go out and receive some passes in Chris Thompson and be very explosive in the open field. So that's what I'm looking at. I think that's a possibility. Also, in the injury front, I also didn't mention to you that for those who are playing Sunday, Monday, or maybe the Monday slate, Seattle is going to be out. Seattle is going to have no Doug Baldwin as well as Bobby Wagner on the defensive side. So that's even worse now for Seattle defensively. They don't got Bobby Wagner. And then, of course, on the offensive side, they don't have Doug Baldwin. But you look at it, if you are playing any game, the Sunday, Monday slate, or you're playing just the Monday night game, that opens up the doors a little bit for Russell Wilson. We know Russell Wilson is going to do everything he can to take care of business for his team. But you have to figure he's going to definitely we're gonna figure Marshall's gonna get some more touches, as well as Tyler Lockhart, and then of course even the wide receiver, the tight end Disley, he definitely played well last week too. So he had like 3 targets or 5 targets, and he had about 100 and somewhat yards. So and then the backfield, they have that little tandem too, Seattle, with Carson and as well as Rashad Penny. So be on the lookout for that. It's not totally a bust for Seattle on Monday night, but I mean definitely this definitely hurts them offensively without Doug Baldwin and as well as no Bobby. Other than that, Deshaun Jackson. Concussion protocol, looks like he's a go. Aaron Rodgers practiced today. He looks like he's a go. Big Ben will play on Sunday. I don't know how well he's going to play, but I mean he is going to play. And then of course Fuller and Hopkins for the Texans are good to go as well. And the Jets, my Jets are getting Jermaine Kearse back as well in the game. And then surprisingly, the Buffalo Bills, they release Mr. Curley today, man. So that was a surprise. And that's pretty much where I am at as far, So again, like I said, the 4 o'clock slate, man, be on the lookout. I think that San Francisco-Detroit game is going to be a good one. I think that's one that you can definitely target. And then obviously you should target and you should have some exposure to the Ram players as well as the Denver Broncos, especially the receivers, Thomas or Sanders or both. I think you'll be okay there. On the defensive end, I didn't speak about the defense, but the defenses, man, I'll be honest with you, I have about 3 or 4 that I like, but I really favor now coming into today. I definitely have narrowed it down to 2. Obviously, the Rams are in play. They're going to be solid tomorrow. They're in a good situation. Philadelphia also, I think they're in a good spot with Tampa Bay. The 49ers as well. I like the 49ers a lot more than the Rams and the Eagles tomorrow. I just feel that they're going to step up a little bit and possibly give Detroit a rough time. But we'll see, man, because Stafford is so dangerous. He's got a cannon of an arm. I think the Chargers are definitely a fine play, absolutely, against Buffalo. And the one I love the most is the Houston Texans, especially now that, earlier today I heard that Coach Vrabel is talking about, I guess, splitting time between Mariota and Gabbert. And when you start doing cut stuff like that, I just don't get it. But and then on top of that, they have 2 offensive linemen hurt. So it's just really, the Texans may be chalky, but again, it's not a big deal, guys. Having 1 or 2 plays be very chalky in a big slate like this, not a big deal. I've mentioned this all the time on DFS. You guys, you don't have to worry yourself about that. And especially with the defenses, you could pretty much go with anybody. But definitely you want to be in a favorable position, in a position where you have some advantages. And with them having 2 offensive linemen hurt and the possibilities of Mariota playing only half the snaps, and then you have Gambert as well, and they're going to be pressed in a position where I think tomorrow, I love Deshaun Watson tomorrow. And Deshaun Watson, if he gets busy and he starts hitting Fuller and as well as his boy Hopkins, is going to be really, really an ugly game for the for the Tennessee Titans, and they're going to have to play from behind, and that's when it's going to get a little dangerous. So that's the way I look at it. With J.J. Watt and company up front, man, and then two linemen coming in that are not part of the starting team is going to definitely be a problem. Definitely going to be a problem. So what we got here, man? Any questions for me? Anybody thinking in the same lines as I'm thinking? Let me say hello to some guys. Hey, what's going on, Orlando? So we got Orlando here. Sir Dave. Demetrius Mack. James Perkins, what's going on, James? Randy Jackson, what's up? Christopher Williams. Is Fournette going to play? No, JP, I listen, even if Fournette is going to play, I'm not on Fournette, man. It's just, that's a tricky game, Jacksonville and New England, man. You got New England not certain about Burkhead. We know that he practiced. I believe I heard that he practiced today. Or he not practiced today. I think he practiced yesterday, and he was also traveled with the team. That's what I last heard. He's traveling with the team to Jacksonville. But listen, no Fournette, no possible Burkhardt. The only advantage here, and the thing is, you have to wait all the way till 4 o'clock to find this out. It puts us as DFS players in a tough spot, man. So you don't know who's going to start until the very last moment. And that's on both sides of the ball. Burkhead, I'm not on any of the New England backs, but if I knew beforehand that Burkhead was not playing, I will have some exposure for the 4 o'clock slate. I will have exposure for Mr. White. I like Mr. White without Burkhead there. And Jacksonville, definitely, Fournette is a great play if he's there, but he's not healthy. And he can't be possibly 100% healthy. I'm one of those. I just do not. I'd rather fade those guys. Same thing with Roethlisberger. He's a little bummed out a little bit. He's gonna try. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. These guys play. I'm not playing these quarterbacks, and I'm not playing those running backs. That's just me. I mean, that's my opinion. Obviously, you guys are entitled. Everyone is entitled to play whom they want. I'm just here to just try to give you some advice to the best of my ability. And to be honest with you, I am not in favor of playing Mr. Fournette, considering that he's been a little banged up. What we have here. Devin asked me if I like the Denver game. Yeah, I mean, I like Denver. I think Denver at home is to me, I think they're going to win this game. And I believe Sanders or Thomas or both are going to have great games. As much as I love John Gruden, man, Oakland is not that good of a team right now. They really are not that good of a team, and they lost their best player, and their best player is gone, man. Khalil Mack is now with the Bears, and he already made a difference. Is Kamara Texans D? Giovanni, yes. I love the Texans D. I just in case you missed it, I did say I like the Rams, I like the Chargers, I like the 49ers and the Texans. They're the four best that I like going into tomorrow. But the one that I am leaning to the most and I have the most exposure to is the Houston Texans. Is Kamara worth fading? Depending on which way you're going to go. You know, I mean, if you're not going to play Kamara in a game that he can possibly have, a monster game once again. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Kamara being a little chalky, man. We all know he's the best play here at running back tomorrow. Granted, Gurley's in a decent spot as well. And don't fall asleep on David Johnson against the Rams. I mean, they're going to need to get something going. And as bad as Sam Bradford is, which I have never loved, never had a liking for Sam Bradford, I mean, the only thing Arizona could do is hope that David Johnson could break a few tomorrow. But Kamara, if you're not playing Kamara, then you got to be on Gurley. And if you're not going to be on Gurley, you're going to have to definitely go with Mr. Gordon or Hunt. One of those two, definitely. I'm a little iffy about McCaffrey, so I'm not going to discuss McCaffrey. I think he can. I think that, unfortunately for Carolina, they really don't have anybody else. They only have Cam Newton and Mr. McCaffrey. That's it. They lost probably their second best receiver, or probably their best receiver, in Mr. Olsen in the tight end spot. Neely, what's going on? Yeah, so Kamara is not, to me, is not a fade. I think he's going to be highly owned, but, GPP, he's good GPP or cash. I mean, for me, I think he's good. He's a core. Let's put it this way. I consider him a core player. Yep, I agree. I agree with Mike. Same thing. Cleveland did give up a lot of yards in the rain, surprisingly, in a really, really bad environment. James Conner still put up, about 160, 170 total yards. I mean, it was just an outstanding game. Hey, we'll see how he plays this week, but I think, at this point, they know that if this kid goes out there, Mr. Conner speaking here, if he goes out there and he plays anywhere near the way he played last week, and Pittsburgh is able to get a win or not, I mean, he's making a name for himself really, really quickly here in the NFL. And that definitely is going to put a damper to Mr. Le'Veon Bell. And it's like, I already said it, Le'Veon who? I mean, no problem. You have no Le'Veon Bell, no problem. You got Mr. James Conner. Well, I disagree with that, Nelia. Kamara does get enough. It depends on the situation. On last week, he didn't get as many rushes. He had to catch a lot more balls. It became that New Orleans had to play catch up, and unfortunately, offenses have to change their scheme. That's just the way it is. I mean, but this week, if they can get out early, get a couple of scores, again, like I said, don't fall asleep on Cleveland. I mean, I'd be honest with you, I didn't touch on it, but out of the two games, out of the games that I was talking about, as far as the lower scoring games, as far as the teams with the lowest implied totals, the two teams that I like the most, and I'm gonna go over them. I know who they are, but I got the information here. Where is it? Okay, the two teams that I like tomorrow with low implied totals for themselves, and also in games where they're not favored to win, are Cleveland is my number one choice. I still like Cleveland. Their implied total is 19.8 points versus New Orleans, and I feel that with Josh Gordon now out, I mean, at first I was all in favor of Landry and Gordon. I mean, they're gonna have to throw because chances are New Orleans, especially at home, they put up a lot of points. As you can see last week, they did as well. I could see New Orleans getting out a little bit ahead. If they can get out, 10 points, 14 points, it's going to put Cleveland in a passing situation the entire time to really get back in the game. And this is going to open the doors, obviously, for Landry, like I said, to get more touches, as well as Mr. Higgins, due to Mr. Gordon being out, and Mr. Callaway. And don't forget the tight end, Nunjuku. So, I mean, there is possibility. And on top of that, Tyrod Taylor is a dual-threat quarterback. He extends plays. He's got good feet. He can rush easily for 50, 60 yards. And I can see that happening here against New Orleans. So, and then I also see that this game could have a possibility of it being fairly close, where Cleveland is only losing throughout the whole game, only by maybe a touchdown, and making it very interesting going into the fourth quarter. So if New Orleans defense tighten up and they play better, and they obviously got to neutralize and get some sort of penetration into Tyrod Taylor. You can't let them sit back in the pocket, move left and right, and put themselves in position to actually roll out and make plays. But if they can neutralize him a little bit, and obviously not allow Cleveland to set up their run game, I mean, that's important too. They do have Carlos Hyde. They do have Duke Johnson. These guys are all capable of also coming off the backfield and getting targets as well, as far as getting receptions. So, again, New Orleans cannot falter tomorrow defensively, but if they do, then Cleveland will probably be in this game. And I think as one of the teams that have one of the least amount of implied total scoring for tomorrow, I like Cleveland as a possible team that could be a little dangerous. Then my second team, who only is projected to have 21.3 implied points, is the Colts, which I mentioned already with Washington. I think, Luck here with Hilton, and then Mack is back in the backfield. If they can get their running game going a little bit against Washington. The only thing is I do like Washington's backfield over Indianapolis, but I like Indianapolis' offense as far as passing than Washington. With Luck, Hilton, and Mr. Doyle, and then of course you got Eric Ebron getting some time as well. It's, in Washington last year, they were one of the worst teams in the league defending against the tight ends. So something to consider there. Granted, they did play well last week. They held down Mr. Seals-Jones. I think he only had I think 5 or 6 targets. He only made 3 catches, and he's expected to do well. And I think he's going to be a fine tight end for Arizona this year, but they got to find themselves. And right now, Washington, again, they played well last week defensively. I think that's all more due to bad quarterbacking. I just don't think Stan Bradford is a good quarterback. And I think that's going to hurt. I think they need to right away just go to Josh Rosen. Just like what the Bills did this week. They just said, hey, man, we're going to go with Josh Allen and let him go out there and let him learn as he plays. And that's the bottom line, because Buffalo's going to be horrible. So why not just put the rookie in there? They might have to do the same in Arizona, especially if they have another poor game this week. I could see them going right to Josh Rosen. Why not? If they're not going nowhere, why not? Let the kid go. Let him learn. Let him take the battles. And let him learn, let him get his feet wet and learn while he's out there on the job, instead of in the sidelines. So that can happen. So again, those are the two teams that I think, for me, I have some exposure to as far as low implied total scoring teams for tomorrow. I always like to find one or two that might be a very, very sneaky, dangerous play where I can target a couple players. And I think Cleveland and Indianapolis, for me, with their matchups, I think that those are two teams that could be pretty surprising tomorrow. Gary Studdard, you're going to try Tyrod Taylor. Yeah, I mean, Tyrod Taylor's in play, man. I mean, he's a dual threat quarterback. He can run. He can throw a little bit. I don't think he's a better dual threat quarterback than, as far as strength in the arm, like Patrick Mahomes for Kansas City. But Tyrod Taylor, you know, he can get the job done. I think he's in a good spot. I'm glad he's not with Buffalo anymore. You know, he should be okay here in Cleveland. The only problem is that they got Baker Mayfield as the #1 draft pick, and he's sitting on the sidelines. Rivers, Gordon, and Allen. I just seen that, James. Yeah, that stack, as far as a team stack, definitely like that stack. Giovanni thinks James Conner is fadeable at 6,700. You have enough players in the running back position this week that should do fairly well. You don't necessarily have to play Mr. Conner. I think Mr. Hunt at 6,200 should have a bounce back game this week at 6,200 here, and I think he's 7,800, a little more pricier on Fanduel, but I have some exposure to him here on DK. And I think also but Connor is a good play. It's just he is definitely someone you can fade. And he's, you know, with the way he played last week, obviously he's probably going to be even maybe a little more chalkier this week. And that's just what I got a feeling. He's going to be maybe at least 35-40% owned. Yeah, I wouldn't even be surprised if he's 50% owned. I mean, it's in a good matchup, high octane offensive game here between Kansas City and Pittsburgh. But I love Kareem Hunt here better. Even though, like I said, Mr. Connor's going to get some exposure because I did make one lineup where I tried to stack that game and I got Mr. Connor in there. I think I put him in my flex spot. So you definitely can get him in there if you want. Everybody's still on Kamara. Kamara is in play, guys. He is. You know, a guy that I really like that really tore up some players for tomorrow for New Orleans, Mr. Watson. He's beat up on Cleveland quite a bit. Last year he put up 17 fantasy points in 2 games individually. So he had 2 massive games against Cleveland last year. So keep an eye on Mr. Ben Watson, which I did mention in the tight end video. I like Ben Watson. I like George Kittle and Mr. Doyle this week. And then watch out for Mr. David Njoku, which I mentioned a little while ago. And, of course, Jared Cook is in play. He's even cheaper. These guys, the tight end position on DK is really, really good this week. I mean, you could easily go with 2 tight ends here if you wanted to, but they have to be highly targeted tight ends. You know, for me, you know, definitely guys like Jack Doyle who gets, 8 to 10 targets possibly a game. Jared Cook got a lot of targets last week. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get that this week, but he may be an option there. But Mr. Doyle does get the receptions. He does get the targets. And I also believe George Kittle is in a good spot here with San Francisco with Jimmy G. They seem to have a good connection, and I can see him getting more than 6 or 7 targets a game. But, you have some studs here as well. Gronkowski is 7,000. But Gronkowski, the last time he played with Jacksonville was in the playoffs. He just had like 1 reception, So I mean, it's a tough matchup for him. So I would not be on. But I think a bounce back week for Kelsey is definitely in play, and Jordan Reed should definitely get targets with Mr. Smith. Alex Smith loves the tight ends. It was part of his offensive scheme last year with for the last few years with Kansas City with Andy Reid. I don't see it no different here. And yeah, those are the guys I like that, but it's a lot of good plays. I mean, Watson is only 3,400 here, man. Jared Cook 3,600, Kittle 3,800, and Jack Doyle 4,000, and Njoku is only 3. That's pretty darn good. And John U. Smith, which I mentioned, is probably one of the only options they got. Mariota and Gambert against Houston. They're gonna have to dump off a lot of little short passes to possibly Mr. John U. Smith. So keep a lookout on him. I mentioned him on my tight end video yesterday. No more tournaments. Devin X. Well, at the moment, I am not doing any tournaments on NFL. I mean, I'm like really pressed for time, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, if there's enough people with interest and they want to do a $5 every Sunday, I'll do a 20-player tournament like I was doing with WNBA. No problem. Bobby says he likes the Lions San Francisco game. Yeah, Bobby, I do as well. I did mention that game is a game that's a good game, especially for the 4 o'clock slate. If anybody's playing the 4 o'clock slate, that San Francisco-Detroit game at 4 o'clock should be pretty interesting. You think at the 4 o'clock slate, you're basically looking at these 4 games right here. Okay, so you're looking at Arizona, and I can go to that Detroit San Francisco game, and I could see making a couple multiple lineups and having Stafford in some, and then definitely having a few with Jimmy G. So if you are targeting these guys, I would probably recommend target them even more so at the 4 o'clock slate. There is some money to be made there in the 4 o'clock slate with 4 games. And that might be a game, and that's also a game that you can game stack, which I mentioned earlier as well. So you definitely have you have some options there as well. Then of course you target the Ram players, and I would definitely target the Denver players. I'm not high on the New England Jacksonville game, especially the run games. Burkhead traveled with the team like I mentioned before, so he may be obviously he may be starting, so that hurts James White. I would have loved Burkhead out and then playing James White. I would have went that route. And then, of course, Fournette, I'm not going to touch him at all with any hamstring problems. I'm not, I played this game when I was young, and I played baseball as well, and you don't want to play with hamstring problems. It's just a little too for me, it's just something I just don't target on DFS. I'd rather just fade those guys. And then Oakland, Denver, man, I love Keenum with his wideouts, man. Sanders in the slot, and then you got Thomas on the left-hand side right next to him. It's just I like those 2 guys there. That's pretty explosive. Who Oakland plays this week? They play Denver. Yeah, Jared Cook is definitely a good spot with Denver. I mean, he's the only one that I would consider on the Oakland team, to be totally honest with you. I mean, I don't like Carr the way he's come out this year. I didn't like him too much last year as well. I did like him the year prior to that. Yeah, I'm not fond of the run game right now. Marshawn Lynch, I'm sick of it already. And then as far as their wide receivers, they just haven't built an identity yet with Carr. So Jordy Nelson as well as Cooper have not looked good, at least after 1 game, but they may bounce back. But their defense, I can't see how they're going to be able to neutralize Sanders and Thomas. So and then Case Keenum, he's already seasoned. He actually played in some very big games last year. This guy is not going to get flooded. I mean, he committed 2 turnovers last week, and he still was able to get the wins. He still was able to put up 3 touchdowns or 2 touchdowns. So Joseph Temple says, who's my favorite GPP? I think my favorite GPP this week, really, really surprising, I love Mr. I'm going to tell you right now, Emmanuel Sanders. Love Mr. Sanders and Case Keenum. I played him last week, and he came through, and I think this week he's going to be just as good. Slot receiver, really runs routes really well, and he has great hands, and he's already built a nice connection already with Case Keenum. Favorite cash play? Favorite cash play, for me, it's either Breeze or freaking Kamara. I mean, Kamara or Breeze, I definitely think those are locks. I think those are, for me, Breeze is like a core player. I mean, you can play him cash, and you can. I just can't see Breeze at home having a horrific game against Cleveland. Cleveland will have to have a massively good defensive scheme to really put Mr. Breeze in a position where he is just going to be faltering all over the place, like fumbling and maybe turning over the ball. And I doubt that. This guy is pretty consistent. Usually a 70% completion ratio. You know, I mean, he's dynamite, especially in his home field. So I doubt it very much that they'll be able to neutralize Breeze. I could see maybe with them neutralizing maybe a little bit the run game a little bit. But again, you have Kamara, and he is a good receiver. He's more a better receiver than in the backfield rushing for yardage between the tackles, even though he's a very effective there as well. But yeah, I think to me, I mean, Breeze is definitely a lock for me as a core player for me. I consider that someone that I will use in cash as well as in a GPP. He is capable of getting you 40 or 45, and if you can do that on a cash game, that's pretty darn good as well. Ben playing, yeah. Big Ben is playing. He's a little bummed up with that knee, man. Again, I mentioned before. I don't know if you heard me, Gary. I'm just not fond of guys being a little banged up. I will not be on Big Ben as far as him being one of my quarterbacks. He will be probably low owned, that's for sure, knowing that he has an injury. Same thing with Mr. Aaron Rodgers. If you're thinking Aaron Rodgers, chances are he's going to play, but he's a little bit banged up too. So that may be, it's just something I just rather not put my money on. There's so many more opportunities out there that I would recommend you guys fade that. So Ben is in play, and Ben needs to be able to at least get back there, be able to get the pass protection he needs. He needs maximum pass protection, set his feet, and hopefully be able to, bury some passes with Mr. Brown as well as Mr. Juju Schuster. If he can do that, Pittsburgh will be in this game. But Kansas City, like I mentioned before, very explosive offense. They got 4 guys that can really hurt them with Mahomes, Hunt, Hill, and Kelsey. If they got their offensive line to push the line of scrimmage on these guys. I can see Hunt, and I can see those guys on those receivers really having a massive game here. Very, very dangerous game. But the only thing about Kansas City is that defense is very, very vulnerable, and that's when it's going to cost this game. That I believe this game is a possibility of going in the 30s. I can see it 37, 34. I can see it up there in the 30s. Gary Stutter is a Steeler fan, man. Hey, wish you guys luck tomorrow, man. I'll be honest with you. I am a little bit more in favor of Kansas City with that offense. So we'll see how it goes. Yes, sir, Dave. I absolutely agree with you. Rodgers is going to have a tough time. And Rodgers is another guy that has enough weapons, man. When he's healthy, then you can definitely target Rodgers, with Cobb. And, they got a nice little core of receivers. And they got some guys that can run, too. So, I mean, Green Bay is going to be dangerous there. It's a little susceptible for me as far as their defense is concerned. I think Minnesota should be okay tomorrow. But Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers not 100%. I am not going to be on Aaron Rodgers. James Perkins, will Tyreek Hill score TD? Is very much possible. He's the most explosive guy on the field other than Antonio Brown, and I think he's probably even faster than Antonio Brown. So don't let him get in the open field. But Antonio Brown is the next guy there. I think both of those guys should both get touchdowns tomorrow. Yeah, I don't see no reason why not, Gary, to play Hill again. I like him. I think he's a fine play tomorrow. I really do. But again, watch out for those Cleveland Browns. Watch out for those Colts. Just a little heads up. If they do well, then we'll discuss it next week, of course. There are some games that you probably shouldn't even be on, I don't think nobody should be on the New England-Jacksonville game, but unless if you're playing the 4 o'clock slate, then I could see someone taking a stab at Brady or maybe Gronkowski. You could put them in your lineup. That I can see, but in the main slate, I'm in favor of not playing anybody there. And I'm not big on the Minnesota-Green Bay game either, even though that game is going to be fairly close. obviously, I love my Jets against Miami. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets do very well against Miami, but I am not playing anybody from any one of those two teams as well in my main slate. I do have them in some of those dollar games and quarter games. As far as Jets, I'm not on anybody from Miami. Philadelphia, definitely you got to have some exposure to Philadelphia against Tampa. So that's a game definitely you should get some players. They're not high on my list, but Philadelphia, obviously, man, you got to think of Foles with Aguilar. I think that's going to be a good play there. Obviously, with Mr. Jeffrey still hurt and out, you definitely got to have to target and get more targets from Aguilar. So I can see that happening. And don't fall asleep on Mr. Clement in the backfield. Carolina, Atlanta, basically, yeah, I just Julio Jones and Matt Ryan, and then you got to think of T. Coleman. Carolina, man, they really don't have anybody other than McCaffrey and Cam Newton, and I just don't know. I'm just not feeling him right now. I love Cam, man. He's such a competitor, great athlete, but he has no offensive weapons, man, for him. He doesn't have anybody to throw to. It's crazy. And this team was just like, a good team just a couple years ago. Sir Dave, yes, Josh Gordon being hurt is definitely a bummer. I was on Josh Gordon as a possible team stack. Like I said, I like Josh Gordon with Landry and, of course, with Tyrod Taylor. But Higgins is a viable little cheap value play there, 4,500. He's going to get some targets, and he is capable of breaking and getting TDs. He's been pretty good in the red zone the last year or so. So Rashad Higgins could be a very nice play, and don't forget about the rookie, Antonio Callaway. Yes, Mike, that's why I say that you got to watch out for Indianapolis tomorrow. I kind of like that game as a game stack, and I kind of like that game as one of those teams that are just, they're, as far as implied totals, they're on the lower end, at that 21 points. But in a game that they're going to be able to, should be able to move the ball a little bit, and they have some weapons, with Luck back and him getting comfortable again with Mr. Doyle. And then, of course, he's always had a great connection with Mr. Hilton. If they give him the protection he needs and he puts up 50 passes, if he can complete 65, 70% of those, he's going to have a very, very good game, and especially if he can hit Hilton or Doyle or even Mr. Ebron for a couple of touchdowns. I can see it happen. I can see Luck throwing for 2 or 3 touchdowns, and I can see him throwing for close to 300 yards or better. I can see it. I can see it happening. We'll have to wait and see. Like I mentioned before, Washington very, 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 very weak against tight ends, especially last year. I think they gave up like about 10 touchdowns to wide receivers to tight ends last year. They did better last week, like I mentioned, but it's early on. I still like to look back at the old statistics. Definitely have to get a gauge there. Aaron Rodgers, yeah, Marky Mark, I'm not on him, but he could be a surprise. Hey, listen, we're talking about one of the best quarterbacks that ever came in, other than Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers, as far as the older quarterbacks, he's one of the best quarterbacks ever in this league. There's no doubt about it. But being bummed out and hurt, I don't know how effective or how efficient he's going to be tomorrow. So for me, I would rather fade him. You got a lot of options. You got some sneaky quarterbacks tomorrow. You got some guys that can really play well tomorrow. You got guys like Matthew Stafford can be, the total opposite of last week. We know he has potential. He has the wideouts. He has the speed. He has guys that he can go to. He needs a little bit of protection, and obviously he needs to be able to be the Matthew Stafford that he has been in the past, with the cannon arm and making sure he's accurate and consistent. If he can do that, then he may have a bounce-back game. I can see him having that. Deshaun Watson. I love Deshaun Watson tomorrow. I think he's going to have a bounce-back game. He's in a favorable matchup, Tennessee. I don't care that they're at Tennessee, but Deshaun Watson, man, he is not going to be held down for that long. He had a terrible game last week. I expect him to have a bounce-back game. I really love him tomorrow with Hopkins as well as Fuller. He's going to hit one of those guys consistently, and he should have definitely a bounce-back game. I think tomorrow also Matt Ryan should be able to bounce back a little bit, for a guy. And that's basically it. Obviously, I'm not on anybody down here. Hey, listen, Josh Allen is down there too, man. 6,100. You could take a stab on Josh Allen. He's not going to be highly owned. We know that for certain. But he has nobody to throw to. That's the whole problem with Buffalo. If he had at least a speedster, somebody there, maybe Charles Clay is probably the only one who's been there a few years, but he's the tight end. He's not going to break too many unless they get in the red zone. I don't know how well they're going to do tomorrow, but, he's not a surprise play to me. I would not be on him. Blake Bortles, I'm not touching anybody between Jacksonville and New England unless it's the 4 o'clock slate. I'm not on Derek Carr. Don't like him. Obviously, Sam Darnold. I'm a New York Jet fans for those who do know. Obviously, I want Donald to do well tomorrow. I think he has a shot to do well tomorrow. Miami's, defense is decent. It's not they're not, they're in the top 15. So they're in the middle. They're in mid-tier defense as far as pass defense and running defense. So I think the Jets have a shot here. We're also playing at home. So, definitely like our chances there. Sam Darnold could possibly have a nice game here. Bottom line, the bottom tier guys, Keenum and Tyrod Taylor, they're definitely the best bets here. A game stack with Pittsburgh and Kansas City. Well, I mentioned before, I kind of like, you can do, if you're going to play multiple lineups and you're going to definitely have exposure as a game stack to Kansas City and Pittsburgh, I have no problem with having one or two of those lineups with Ben, and then one or two lineups as your quarterback being Patrick Mahomes. Either or you can go. Me personally, I would prefer to go with Mahomes, the dual threat quarterback, as opposed to Big Ben, who's a little banged up, and it's more, Big Ben, for being Big Ben, he is a mobile quarterback, but he loves to throw from the pocket if he can. But Patrick Mahomes, I love his position as far as what kind of athlete he is. So I will go Mahomes, and I'll be more than happy to squeeze in there Hunt or Connor as a running back, and definitely have exposure to the receivers. This is going to be a high-scoring game, and you definitely want to get some of those receivers. I definitely love Hill. I definitely love Antonio Brown. And you could probably squeeze in there, instead of Kelsey, I will go with Juju Schuster. So you can get both of Pittsburgh's key receivers, maybe even squeeze in the flex spot Mr. Connor, and put Mr. Hill as one of your running backs, and then have Mahomes as your quarterback. I think that works, and then just build around those guys among the other games that I think you should be targeting, which I mentioned, like the Rams, the Washington Redskins, Indianapolis, Denver, any of the Chargers players. Just build your lineup around those that have, and my tip is, obviously, the ones that are going to get the most targets. You want targets. Targets turn into receptions. Okay, you want carries. More carries leads to more yardage. Obviously, more yardage, more fantasy points. The possibilities of getting touchdowns, and the same thing with the receivers. So, that flex position is open for you to do either one of those two. Whatever you feel it fits you best. Are you going to be able to have a running back that has a lot of upside, and you'll be able to squeeze them in the flex? Why not? There's more exposure to running backs usually than they are, at least so far in the last year or so, in the NFL as far as daily fantasy sports, than there would be the receivers. Because you have now you have a lot of dual threat running backs. You have the Camaras. You have even Ingram for New Orleans, who's could get out of the backfield and catch some balls. Then you move on. You got Hunt. You got Gordon. You got now James Conner. You have Le'Veon Bell. So you have all these guys that are dual threat running backs. Makes it very difficult for teams, because now they got to worry about not only maybe trying to stop these guys from getting between the tackles and being explosive, but at the same time being able to be check down receivers, be able to run great routes, get in the seams, get in the flats, and be dangerous as well with their speed and their athletic ability. So it causes a lot of concern. Yeah, Neely, that's a good point you bring up there, man. Cleveland did play well last week. Yeah, granted, that's the one, and I did mention that earlier in the week in one of my videos, the one good thing that Cleveland did well last week defensively is they got 3 interceptions last week off of Big Ben. Again, bad weather was a factor, could be a factor, or was a factor in that happening. But at the same time, we're not going to discredit Cleveland. The defense did play well. Now they're going into a hostile atmosphere. They're going into New Orleans. New Orleans just finished losing a game where there was a shootout. The defense was totally let them down. I expect the defense to play better. I do expect Cleveland to play good, because I think Cleveland is definitely a better team. I mentioned that just before we started the NFL season. I felt that Cleveland really improve themselves offensively, and they're going to score some points. If New Orleans can neutralize Tyrod Taylor, the run game, and put him in a position where, because Tyrod could be a little, careless with the football, and he floats a couple balls at times too. They could be a totally different story, but I really believe that New Orleans is going to get out in front, and I think Cleveland is going to have that opportunity to be aggressive as far as passing the ball, and I think that they can actually move the ball a little bit on them with Landry. It would have been better with Gordon, but with Landry, Higgins, you still have Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson, who comes off the backfield very well. You got, Cleveland has got a shot here to put some points up. Okay, Gary says, Pats defense, Jets defense, or others. I am not any exposure to New England, Jacksonville, and to be honest with you, if I am, the 4 o'clock game, I will probably go with Jacksonville's defense over New England. I would probably take Jacksonville over that, but I would more than likely go with the Rams or San Francisco in the 4 o'clock slate. As far as the main slate, I am not in favor of New England. I wouldn't mind taking the Jets. You mentioned the Jets. My Jets played very well last week on Monday night. The defense looked pretty good, and that's without one of our key safeties in Marcus May. So, I mean, we definitely lose out there, but we played well. So, I don't see why. And we're at home. So, yeah, I could see the Jets doing very well again defensively this week. You could go with the Jets. And what's the other team or others? It depends on what defensively. Like I said, I mean, I probably missed it early on. I said it earlier as far as which teams I'm targeting. Obviously, the Rams are the top-notch team defensively tomorrow. They're in a very, very good matchup against Arizona. My favorite team is the Houston Texans, I said. All right, I love the Texans. Tennessee has 2 offensive linemen bummed out. They have a quarterback situation where today I found out that Coach Vrabel is thinking about, using both quarterbacks in Marcus Mariota and as well as Blaine Gabbert. I am not in favor of that at all, and that alone, that just draws red flags for me, man. I'm already looking at, hey, J.J. Watt and company, they're pretty good front, 3-4 guys up front. I can see Houston really putting a lot of pressure on both of these quarterbacks and put them in position to really be very careless with the football. Now, granted, Tennessee, I do love Dion Lewis. If they can establish the run game a little bit with Dion Lewis, I think Dion Lewis would be a nice play tomorrow. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I do like the Texans' opportunity here to possibly get a couple of turnovers and some sacks on these quarterbacks. So I like the Texans the most, and I think after that I do like the Rams, and I do like the Chargers as well, and the 49ers. It's also the 4 that I said were the top choices for me. And if you're looking at the 4 o'clock slate, I would say definitely San Francisco or the Rams. And if you're not going to go that route, you could go with any of the others. You can go Jacksonville. You can even go Denver at home. And as you can see, all 4 of those teams in the 4 o'clock slate, they're all home. I like those defenses at home. Denver over Oakland, and I like Jacksonville with New England. I love San Francisco versus Detroit. Again, don't sleep on Stafford. And, of course, San Francisco, the Rams and Arizona at Los Angeles. Yeah, 15 or 40, Mike, last week for Tyrod Taylor. But, again, he had to play. Listen, 15 or 40. Look at it this way. 15 or 40, he was very ineffective, okay, compared to Ben Roethlisberger, who threw just as many passes. But for the time that he was on the floor, especially his mobility, he was able to get 77 yards, 78 yards, in about 7 carries. I mean, he was very explosive. So, I mean, he definitely stretches it out, and he gave himself an opportunity to still be effective in as far as with moving his feet. So he's dangerous with running the ball, So Tyrod Taylor, 15 or 40. Hey, you know what? If he takes 40, I think if he takes 40 throws, he takes 40 passing attempts tomorrow, I think he's going to be a little bit more better tomorrow. The weather had definitely something to do with it. He floated a lot of bad balls. And obviously a wet football, maybe smaller hands than Big Ben. Who knows? But definitely the weather was a concern last week. And I thought it was going to be more of a running game because, remember, I mentioned to you guys that I thought Carlos Hyde would be a nice play in this matchup last week with Pittsburgh for Cleveland. And Carlos Hyde was non-existent after the first couple of snaps. He wasn't really much involved. They really realized that they wanted to basically try to establish some sort of throwing against Pittsburgh. They probably knew something that I didn't think they would do, especially in the rain the way it was. And sometimes it was pouring. Which tight end? Either one of those, nearly any one of those, I would be on. I'm actually like both of those guys tomorrow. I would think John U. Smith definitely needs to be involved in his offense. I can see him getting a lot of short passes because Mariota's game, maybe not so much Gambit, but Mariota's game is mostly within those 10, 15, 20 yards. He's really not one of those quarterbacks that goes deep a lot. He doesn't have the players for it, so I mean you can't blame the kid. So we're probably not gonna pin it on Mariota. He just doesn't have those kind of players. But I can see this kid Smith, getting a lot of passes within that 10, 15, 20 yard range, especially up the middle. So, and then of course as far as Mr. Nunjuku, I could see him definitely inside this dome scenario indoor facility. I could see him doing well here for Cleveland. And they're going to have to get him involved because he is pretty athletic. I mean, the guy is athletic. He's willing to, go extend the plays more. He's capable of breaking tackles. He's got decent speed. And he's just strong, man. He breaks tackles. He's willing to jump over guys. I've seen him do a couple of nice things. I'm like, I like the kid. So I mean, they got to get him involved somehow. And this is a good opportunity here. Greg Olsen, yeah, Greg Olsen is hurt. He's out, man. It's just a shame for Carolina because they can use him. They definitely can use him, and unfortunately, they are not gonna have him for a while. But the tight ends, man, I say just if you're going to play the tight end, if you're going to play on Fanduel, the tight ends that you got to be on, you're going to have to pay up a little bit. Kittle, Doyle, definitely on the best spots out of the two. And I definitely like Benjamin Watson. I think he's in a good spot here. He destroyed Cleveland. He destroyed Cleveland when he was with the Ravens last year, both games. He put up 17 DK points in each one of those games and had over 100 yards on both, I believe, if I remember correctly. So he had a massive 2 games against them, and he's actually played well against them 3 out of the last 4 games. So, Benjamin Watson is definitely a great play tomorrow. And then, of course, Jared Cook is good too. And if you're going to go any lower, I think Vance McDonald may be playing a little bit for Pittsburgh tomorrow, so that's going to probably cut in a little bit on Jesse James. And I pretty much think that is it. But when you come over and you see those same prices on DK, man, I'm loving the DK prices for these guys. I mean, you got Jack Doyle at 4,000. You got Kittle at 3,800, Cook at 3,600, Ebron at 3,500, Watson at 3,400. Then you got John U. Smith at 3,100 and Nunjuku at 3,000. Yes, Dante Pettis is definitely someone in play, obviously, with Mr. Goodwin out. You got to think of, like I said, I love Jimmy Garoppolo in this position. He looked very good last week other than the drop passes. Obviously, Kittle dropped one. It could have been a touchdown. So Kittle would have had better numbers last week as well. But I like him here. The only concern in this game is that I think that Detroit's passing attack is more dangerous than San Francisco's. They have more explosive receivers in Tate and Jones. And this guy, Galladay, he had a freaking good game against the Jets. He played pretty well. So they're going to need Pierre Garçon to come through, and obviously Dante Pettis, the rookie. They're going to need to have those guys come through. And I think with those two, and of course with George Kittle, I think San Francisco is going to be okay here. Like I said, 4 o'clock slate game, this is not a bad game to game stack. Not at all. Probably the better one out of the two because it should be fairly competitive. It should be both in the 20s. They have them projected. What they have San Francisco projected. They got San Francisco projected at 27.3 and Detroit 21.3, 48.5. So that's where I'm at, guys. What else we got? Guys, I appreciate you guys, ladies and gentlemen. If there are any ladies here, obviously I appreciate you guys dropping a like on the live show, man. I enjoy doing this, but at the same time, I hope I'm helping you guys out in any way, as far as information is concerned or advice. But I think I definitely given you the best possible plays. I'm sure we have a lot of people. Obviously, there's a lot of channels out there doing a lot of stuff too as well. So I mean, granted, we're all gonna look through everybody as much as possible, and we're gonna probably be all pretty much similar in some capacity as far as some of the plays, because obviously we all like looking at the information, checking out stats, looking at past history, looking at injury reports. All that comes into play. Weather, obviously, definitely the Vegas lines always are critical in every sport. So you definitely got to look at it. All right, Mr. Dave. Good luck tomorrow, bro. You got it. So, yeah, like always, guys, man, just appreciate drop a like, of course. And if you're first time here, hey, you know what? Subscribe. I do the live shows every Saturday at 7 p.m. And, of course, we're going to carry it on all through the entire NFL season, through the postseason. And, of course, we have the NBA coming up as well next month. So a very busy time, but I'll do everything I can to get as much information, videos out to you guys, as well as the live shows. Anybody playing the Monday night, remember I said earlier that injury report has Mr. Bobby Wagner and as well as Doug Baldwin out for Seattle. So if you're thinking Seattle, it definitely opens up a little bit of value. Okay, so you got to consider, the backfield for Seattle, Carson, as well as Mr. Penny. Pretty much the kind of guys that share the time back there, and they're both capable of getting some targets as well off the backfield. And you're gonna have to consider Lockett, and Mr. Marshall as your key guys, other than Mr. Russell Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Mark Benitez. Yeah, as far as Isaiah Crowell, for the Jets, man, I'm not on Isaiah, but, you guys know already I'm a Jet fan. I think, man, I don't have no exposure in this game. I'll be willing to take a stab on the Jets on a few lineups as far as defense, because I think they might be able to shut down this team. I mean, Ryan Tannehill is not the best quarterback in the world. We know that. But he does have a couple of little, couple offensive weapons with Drake, and as well as with Stills, and Mr. Dante Parker. So I mean, but I like the Jets as far as defense. Isaiah Crowell at 6,400. I mean, if you're looking for a running back at that price range, let's see if somebody's in a better spot. If you're looking at that price range, why not Chris Thompson? I think Chris Thompson is in a great spot here. He's going to get touches. He's part of the Washington attack here, the offensive. You got Peterson running the ball, and you got him coming in. Third down situations. Peterson's not a 3-down back. Obviously not anymore. So you definitely have Chris Thompson there. He's going to get his touches. He's going to get some carries, and he's going to get his touches off the backfield. He's a great slot receiver, great freaking off the backfield. A check down receiver. He gets in the zones. He gets in the flats. He's got great open field speed. So Chris Thompson is not a bad play here against Indianapolis, which I think is going to be a game that is going to be pretty close, and it's going to be in the 20s like Vegas has projected. Other than them, I mean, keep an eye on T.J. Yeldon, for Jacksonville. I mean, if Fournette doesn't go, the only problem is this leaves us in limbo here. So I would say go with Yeldon because we know he's going to get touches, he's going to play. But we don't know if Fournette is going to play. That's the whole problem. Same thing with Burkhead. We don't know if White is going to play. White would be a great play. James White. And he's even cheaper. He's $5,900 on Fanduel. James Perkins says, Cowboys 55, Giants 10. That's not going to happen, James. I'm sorry, buddy. If they do that, man, that would be truly amazing. The Cowboys 55-10. The Cowboys have no offense, man. They only got Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. Trust me, the Giants, I hate to go over to another subject here, but the Giants, the only thing the Giants have to do is shut down Ezekiel Elliott. Let Dak Prescott try to beat you, and he has no weapons, man. Everybody in all his receivers are slot receivers. They're all small. Nobody has massive speed. You need a little bit of height. They lost that in Dez Bryant. They lost out on the retired Jason Witten was another big target. He doesn't have those guys. He's actually taller than those guys, Dak Prescott. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. The Giants look pretty darn good. The Giant defense is better than the Dallas defense all around, in my opinion. And at the same time, their offensive weapons, Eli Manning has been killing the Cowboys. That's one team that he definitely does play well against. Eli Manning is, Manning's just got to hit OBJ a few times, man. And then he's got now a legitimate dual threat running back in Mr. Barkley. I don't know. And then on top of that, Mr. Ingram, the tight end, is fantastic, man. So the Giants have a couple little weapons there. If their offensive line can hold, they can push that line of scrimmage. We know the Cowboys' front four. Lawrence is very good. But that's about it, man. That's really about it. I know you guys, hey, Cowboys America's team. I don't know. Not for me, James. I'm sorry, buddy. Hey, I appreciate you. I really do. But the Cowboys, yeah, they're going to have a rough game, man. That Sunday night game, if you're going to play the Monday slate, I think you definitely should give us some exposure to the New York Giants. Maybe not the defense, but I definitely... James has reconsidered. He has made it 17-10. Hey, hopefully it pans out for you, buddy. I hope it pans out for you. But, yeah, I think the Giants have a good chance of winning this game, on Sunday night. But it should be an interesting game. I don't have a whole lot of exposure, but I think if I'm going to play, and I'll make that decision tomorrow, the Monday slates, I like playing those smaller slates. I believe I will have some exposure definitely to the Giants as far as OBJ, Barkley, and Eli Manning. And I think Eli and them, in that 2-game slate, I think there'll probably be more exposure to the Giants as well, because I'm sure others will think the same way I'm thinking. I think the Dallas doesn't have enough to defend against the Giants. And I think the Giants' defense should be okay. They only have to, listen, I'm the coach of the Giants, Mr. Sherman. Yo, dude, the only thing you have to do is freaking neutralize Mr. Ezekiel Elliott. Neutralize Zeke, put Dak Prescott in the position that he has to throw, and see if he can make those throws to, the guys he has. And he has Hearns and what's the other guy? Cooley or whatever his name is, and the other guy. Come on. I don't see it. Burkhead is questionable. Yeah, Burkhead is questionable, but he did fly with the team, and as far as I'm concerned, I think he's going to play. And that hurts, man, because really I was hoping he was out, because I kind of like the idea of throwing in there James White in a few. I know he's going to be low owned, and he will probably be a nice little GPP play there, James White. But if he's going to play, then that definitely kills James White for me, I'd rather put the money somewhere else. Well, I'm going to give it a few more minutes, guys, and then I'm going to wrap it up, because I'm getting ready to watch Triple G and, of course, Canelo Alvarez for you fight fans out there, because I'm a big sports fan. I watch everything. My house, I could have like 5 monitors in my room. I watch everything at the same time. So, yeah, it's just so I'm getting ready for the fights. Jags can't stop the run. Well, if they can get James White, I think White, to me, in my opinion, I'd rather have James White than Burkhead starting. But again, hey, Belichick is the coach, and he is he's one of probably the best coaches ever in this league. So you got to respect his decision if he puts Burkhead in. And we know Burkhead is explosive, and he's capable of cutting out, check down up the middle, really right underneath the tackles, in between the tackles there in that zone. He is very good at that. Yeah, Neely, you brought him up. Yeah, Eckler is I mentioned Eckler in this week's wide receivers, as other than Allen, watch out for Eckler, who had a good game last week. Yes, I definitely love Allen, but Eckler is definitely someone you can consider in a game against Buffalo. Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. And what is his price again? He's right here. He's 5,600, and I bet you he's about maybe 1,000 cheaper on DraftKings. Where are you playing him in? DraftKings or Fanduel? I'm trying to find him. Where is he? Eckler. Hold on a second. I want to see his price. Where are you, Chargers? There you go. Eckler is 4,400. Okay, 4,400. Yeah, I mean, you know, he's someone to consider. DK, yes, 4,400. I like Eckler here. Definitely. Buffalo game, and he put up. I think he put up like what? He put up 23 DK points last week. Shit, he had a very good game. You know, granted, you know, different week. We all know, any given Sunday, anything can happen. Always remember that. Nothing's guaranteed. So, guys, make sure you always remember that. We're still gambling here, you know. Yeah. Well, I get your point there, Mike, and I know that Barkley ran over 100 yards against the Jacksonville Jaguars last week, but we're talking about Barkley here. He's a rookie, hungry, very explosive, dual threat back, and then you can't compare that with Burkhead or even James White. I mean, this kid is just, you know, this kid is 2-3 times better than these guys. You know, at least that's my opinion. I mean, everybody has the right to their own opinion, and you know, hands down, I think Barkley is just a better overall athlete compared to Burkhead and White. So I can see where your point is coming from, because Barkley had a great game last week. You could expect Jacksonville to be vulnerable against the run, but no, it's not this. It's not the same player. And we'll have to wait and see. You know, again, anything can happen. You could be absolutely right. Maybe Burkhead comes in here and maybe puts up. I don't think he's going to put up 106 yards, but he could probably put 106 of all-purpose yards, because he's capable of getting some targets as well. Chris Hogan might bounce back tomorrow. Possibly. I was on Chris Hogan last week. I said he might be a sneaky play, and man, I put him in about 5 of those quarter lineups, and jeez, that was a killer, man. That was a killer, man. You know, but yes, he can have a possible bounce back week, and that would even be more helpful for him if there was no Burkhead. But unfortunately now, you know, remember, James White is more between the tackles type of runner. He doesn't really get a whole lot of touches off the backfield, and that's why I think New England favors Burkhead, because he's capable of doing both. But and then they obviously complement each other, just like Washington with Peterson and Mr. Chris Thompson. So, but I know you know, again, I just think I'm not feeling it. But I think Chris Hogan, as far as New England is concerned tomorrow, especially if you're considering the 4 o'clock slate, I can see squeezing in Mr. Hogan. I think he's definitely going to be low owned, and I think he has the possibilities of bouncing back here. Yeah, it was bad for Hogan, man, last week. It was just terrible. I mean, he got like probably 5-6 targets, and he only got 1 catch, something like that. I mean, I don't know, man. It was just bad. You know, last week it was all Brady with Gronkowski and Mr. Dorsett. Nobody's talking about Dorsett. You know, with Dorsett could possibly be a play tomorrow in that game for New England. Absolutely. I just don't have no exposure to it right now, but when it comes to the 4 o'clock slate, I will have some exposure to it. I may see myself taking Jacksonville in one lineup, but I'm definitely favoring the defenses of the Rams and San Francisco or Denver in that 4 o'clock slate, if you know, as far as defenses are concerned. And the exposure for New England and Jacksonville will probably be New England in my eyes. I would not be looking at Jacksonville as far as backfield unless we know for certain that Leonard Fournette is not going to play. If TJ Yeldon is starting, then I will have some exposure to Mr. Yeldon. You know, and then if it's not, then I like New England. I like New England. I would be willing to even throw Brady in the lineup, or possibly a Brady team stack with Mr. Gronkowski. Hogan, Freeman, and Barber. Well, I mean, yeah, Freeman. You had talking about Royce Freeman, right? And I thought Royce Freeman was gonna do. I thought he was gonna start and play a lot of and get a lot of a lot of rushes, but he didn't. Yeah, that game for the Bills is going to be really, really ugly tomorrow, man. I could see Eckler. I could see definitely Mr. Melvin Gordon have a big game for the Chargers. Well, I mean, the defense that they played last year against them on the playoffs was exactly that. They had one of the defensive backs actually covering him. They didn't pair him up with a linebacker. It's tough to hold down Gronk with a linebacker. You would have to be you have to be a Von Miller to hold on to him. you have to be Von Miller to guard Mr. Gronkowski. And he is tough to guard. There's a lot of linebackers that cannot keep up with this guy. And he's tough. He's tough, and he just loves it. He loves brutalizing people. Neely says, I need to hit it big. Yeah, I mean, we all... Hey, listen, well, I have exposure to this 1 million game. I mean, granted, it's $15 this week, which is a killer. Obviously for us small guys, we don't have that kind of money. We're not big shots. We're not what we call sharks in the industry that have a lot of money to throw at these $1 million matchups. This is why I like to cater to the small lineups, to the small slates, especially in every sport. That's my bread and butter, to be honest with you guys. That's the way I play. I play maybe just 1 or 2 lineups. Last week I had 7 lineups in the Millionaire Sunday Million, and they were all won through my Major League Baseball and WNBA tickets that I won in winning 10 and 20 player tournaments, which I shared with you guys on Instagram and on Twitter and all that, so that it doesn't look like I don't win anything, because I do. But yeah, but it was tough. I didn't even come close, even with some very good lineups, and I made about 5-6 different lineups out of those 8. And then I cashed, and my cashes were on the Sunday, Monday, and the 4 p.m. slate. So go figure. It's just I do better on those because it's a little easier to put a couple multiple entries in a 4 game slate or 2 game slate or something like that, something smaller. These main slates, you definitely you could definitely do a lot of multiple lineups, and you definitely should have maybe some lineups where you have your core 4 or 5 that you really, really feel good about. You're capable of having them in cash plays, maybe even GPPs. But I'm a GPP player. For those, obviously, most of you know that from WNBA. I've mentioned it even if you followed me from the NBA. I always say I play very little cash games, and if I play anything small, it's usually a 20-player, tournament, 10-player, and put up the $2 or the $5 and just try to hammer that out, just to keep the balances right on my bankroll. I normally don't play head-to-head, and I don't play 50-50s. It's just I don't feel like I want to put my money into that and then just double my money unless I'm playing large amounts of money. Like if I'm playing $20 and I can get $20, fine. But I'm not gonna expose myself, and I don't recommend anybody to do that. Like I mentioned last week and the week before, if you're new to all this, your bankroll is important. If you want to build your bankroll, definitely have some exposure to the GPPs, but also play those 50-50s and those double-ups, and you'll have a better chance of surviving. And I would say, and I would recommend, only use 20%. And I used the example last week, and again, I'm going to use it again. If you have $100, that means you should only be exposing only $20 this weekend and keeping yourself available to have 4 weeks more of NFL. If you're playing NFL and you have $100, that's just using that as an example. If you have 500, then maybe you might want to go 5 weeks and just use $100 a week. It all depends. So this is why I always try to give you guys multiple plays, because you got to have those options, man. Some people like DK, some people like Fanduel, some people playing both. This gives you that opportunity to do that, and at the same time, you'll be able to, put yourself in a position where you're bankroll. You got to know how much you're going to invest into the NFL for the entire year. That's the best I can give anybody. So if it's $500, make sure that you're using only $100 a week. Spread yourself out. Make sure you have 100. Use only 20%. In my opinion, I think you use 20%. Gary says, when Brady retires, it will be a celebration for me. Yeah. He's killed the Steelers over the years. I understand. He's killed a lot of people, man. Tom Brady is, man, he is something else. What a bargain he was, man, for the first few years in the league. Holy shit. But, all right, guys, man, it's 8:30. I know last week I went 2 hours and change here. My wife was telling me, what the hell are you doing? Plus, like I said before, I'm getting ready for the fights tonight. So, I'm going to wrap it up here, man. I wish you guys a lot of luck tomorrow, man. Let me know, man, down below tomorrow if you guys are doing well. You know, I love to always interact with my audience and at the same time be able to see who's having some success, either with my recommendations and advice or not. It doesn't matter. I want to keep a DFS community going live and well every week, so the interaction is good. And remember, we have a Facebook group or Facebook page, DFS Zone. You can go there. I always share my results, big or small, on Instagram as well as on Facebook and as well on Twitter. So that information is down below of the video here in the description box. And you know, it is what it is, man. Again, drop a like on the live stream, man. I would love to continue doing these, knowing that people do enjoy them and that we're getting some value out of it. And at the same time, if you're new to the channel, definitely subscribe. Videos will be coming a little bit more quicker. I've been kind of like really busy, so the first 2 weeks have been really crazy. But I'm trying to settle into this NFL thing. So as far as I'm concerned, I will be getting faster as we go. So hopefully the quarterback and the running back videos will be up very quickly, like Monday, maybe early Tuesday, and I won't be doing videos all the way to the end of the week, which I did this week, which was horrific. It was just terrible for me. So I'm going to definitely, you know, change that up a little bit and get that information to you guys a little bit quicker. All right. So anyway, guys, that's basically it, man. Thank you, Mike, Gary. Thanks, you guys, for coming out. You know, Neely, a whole bunch of you guys. Marky Mark, some of you guys are from the WNBA. I appreciate that. Hey, man, you know, real quickly before I leave, man, congratulations to the Seattle Storm and winning the WNBA. For the guys who've been following and been a part of my WNBA experience this year on DFS Zone here on YouTube. Man, it was a pretty good season by Seattle. I did tell you guys going into the playoffs, I thought Seattle would win that. You know, I was in favor of Washington because I love my, you know, Elena Delle Donne, you know, the hottie thing that she is. And, you know, it fell short for Washington. But Seattle, definitely the better team. The better team won. So congratulations to the Seattle Storm. And let's see how they do next year. And that's basically it, man. And let's just go and get this money tomorrow. Right, guys? Good luck, Cowboy fans. Yeah, good luck to the Cowboy fans, man. You know. Let's go Giants. So you got I hate to stick it to you. But nonetheless, man, yeah, you know, hey, Jets tomorrow, man, you know that. Jets all the way. Expect the Giants to do well. Good luck to the Cleveland fans, you know, Cleveland versus New Orleans. I kind of like Cleveland giving them a little bit of a tough game there tomorrow. That'll be nice. And what other shout-outs I can give? I don't know. I can't say too much about the Pittsburgh game because I really like the Kansas City players there, but we'll see how that goes. And that's basically it, guys. Man, enjoy the night. Yeah, that cutie pie, Elena Delle Donne. She's a hottie, man. Girl is freaking gorgeous. Gorgeous, and she can actually ball, man. What a turn on, right? So anyway, guys, all right, that's pretty much it, man. Your boy Manny is out, man. Have good luck tomorrow. Have a great night, man. And if you guys are boxing fans, man, definitely take a look at. It should be an interesting fight tonight with Triple G and Canelo Alvarez. That's their second fight. All right, guys.